Hey y'all, it's Johnny C. Cochran here, candidate for Congress, Alabama's 4th Congressional District. Wanted to make a video regarding the topic of abortion. Now, I've had several potential voters across the district asking me for my stance on this issue. I understand it is certainly one of the more controversial issues being discussed in our society. And so I hope you'll listen to this video in its entirety because I'd like to kind of explain not just my position, but also my thought process. Right. So before we get into how I got to my position, I just want to make a general statement, which is I think as a people, uh, we need to have more empathy for one another. And when I see people engage in this topic, it's I don't know. I just feel like there's a certain empathy that's missing. Not only in the folks that are having these arguments back and forth, but also, because this is an issue that, you know, pregnancy is a very complicated thing. And I just think we should have more empathy for all people involved. Right. I also think it's important to start with some definitions. So to me, abortion is the elective termination of a viable pregnancy. Okay. I do not consider a medical procedure which is done in order to save the life of the mother. And as a course of that action, that the life of the baby is lost. To me, that is not abortion. It's tragic, and we grieve the loss of the life of the child, but that to me is not an abortion. It's the elective termination of a viable pregnancy. I want to share two stories, and I've tried recording this video a couple of times and have not always maintained composure. But I have so many people asking me about this topic. I'm just gonna post this video no matter what. Um, I'm the oldest of three, and my kid's sister, uh, she had some complications with her first pregnancy. Um, I'm, gonna try not to uh, get too much in the details, but as I was told or understand it, the doctor recommended terminating the pregnancy, and the reason being was is that some of the organs were developing outside of the body, and they said that if the pregnancy continued, there was a high probability that as soon as the baby would born, the baby would have to go right back into surgery and put these organs back inside the body where they needed to go. And that procedure had some risk and some complications. And that, future surgeries might have to happen as the child got older if there were more complications. Now, my sister, you know, she married a Catholic man. She converted, and they thought about it. They prayed upon it, and they elected not to terminate the pregnancy. Over the course of that pregnancy, um, when they went back to get checkups, somehow the organs that they said were outside the body were back inside the body, and they were exactly where they needed to be. But a second time, the doctor recommended terminating the pregnancy, and the reason being was is that they couldn't quite tell uh, what exactly was wrong with the baby, but they had a very strong, um, visual about something about the child that suggested that it was not going to be a healthy, normal baby. And so again, they were kind of put in this position. and they thought about it, they prayed about it, and ultimately they elected not to terminate the life of the baby. And, now I have a beautiful niece, and she loves to read, she loves music, and, she's just uh, precious. And, it does turn out that she is a special needs child. Um, it's very complicated. It's not Down syndrome, but it's not an extra chromosome, but it's a line of DNA has been deleted. It's missing. And so if I were to try to explain to you what my niece is like, it's kind of like a combination of someone who is somewhat similar to Downs, but also probably on that autism spectrum. And, you know, she's alive today. I believe she deserves a chance at life. And it's been, and that's not to say it hasn't been easy for my kid sister and her family. Um, any parent of a special needs child, it's going to be hard, and it's going to challenge them like nothing else has challenged them. But um, and it's still challenging to this day. But they have a wonderful family. They have three children now, and so certainly, you know, her having gone through this and having a medical professional give their professional opinion twice that the child's life should be ended before having a chance, and then seeing her in this world, you know just beautiful little girl. um Certainly that's kind of shaped my worldview a little bit. And I'll say, um, outside of this kind of family story, um, I have grown up with and know people who have had Down syndrome or autism. And quite frankly, I find it repulsive that people think that those lives should have never been given a chance. Um, you know, I, you know, I've interacted with folks, went to school with folks. I'm friends with folks who are heavily involved in organizations like Best Buddies, and I think those are great organizations. And you know, I believe that those people have deserve a chance at life in this world. Um, so, having shared that story, I'll share another story, which is we're friends with a couple, and they were telling a story about their friends. Okay, so this is kind of a secondhand story as opposed to immediate family, in which during the pregnancy, um, the end of the pregnancy, the doctors said there was something going on with the pregnancy, which was not ideal. And the more they monitored it, and I don't want to get into too much details, but it had something to do with the child's bones. That they said that there was no way this baby was going to survive childbirth. Right. So that, I mean, that has to be a a gut punch if I've ever heard one. That the child's not going to survive the childbirthing process. And they lived in a state where abortion was not an option as far along as they were. And, you know, I can't even imagine being in that position myself. But, um, you know, they consulted with their doctor, and the doctor, in their opinion, said it would be a more merciful death to the child to perform an abortion versus going through the childbirthing process. but they were not given that option. And, tragically, the baby did not survive the childbirthing process. Again, I can't imagine being put in that position. Um, and I have empathy for this couple. Um, so those two stories kind of give me some perspective, I think, on both sides. And it's always, you know, we're such a binary society. We have to divide up into two camps, right? Pro life or pro choice. And, you know, I think, I think we could use a lot more nuance in these types of conversations. So those two stories have really impacted my thinking. If you have asked me as a young adult back in the early 2000s, I think I would have agreed with a what I would call a generic Democrat's position, which was safe, legal, and rare, right? But somewhere along the way, it morphed. People bragging about the dozen plus abortions they've received. And I've tried to really educate myself about this topic. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've watched some debates. I've read a lot of articles. And from what I gather, most Americans, even though they might describe themselves as pro choice, actually believe that there should be a limit on when these things are done, you know? Um, and so, I guess I'm trying to share a story of how I've come to where I am now, which is that the more I've studied pro life arguments, the more pro life I've become. I mean, if we somewhere draw an arbitrary line, right, at X number of weeks, you know, it's okay to do an abortion, but the following day, the day before, it's not, or the day after, it's not, right? So, is that baby not a person a minute before that arbitrary line? What about the minute before that, the hour before that, the day before that? You know, here's what I believe. I believe we have to promote a cultural life. I believe that we have to err on the side of life, and I believe that life begins at conception. We certainly can't electively terminate babies that can survive outside the womb. And as technology advances, the age in which babies can survive out of the womb will continue to uh, be less and less. Okay. Um, some people have asked me specifically about what about rape and incest. Now, obviously, horrific, violent crimes such as rape. Um, from what I have read or understand, these are a very small amount of the cases in abortion. So certainly, I am not against people using birth control and things of that nature. But I will say one thing that's kind of a mind screw, okay? Which is, have you ever spoken to someone that was born of rape? I mean, have you been in the room with them? Have you looked them in the eyes? Have you talked to them? I mean, they've lived a life, right? They have a career. They've made friends. They're loved. Perhaps now they have children. And who am I to judge whether that person should have existed or not? One of the things I think is most interesting about this topic that I don't hear almost anyone talk about in this conversation is the number one reason given for elective abortions is not being able to financially support the child. This, I believe, more than any law that's being proposed, is actually the way to achieve the goal of reducing abortions. Okay. Now, I think almost everybody has read those scary articles that says it costs $250,000 to raise a child in America from birth until age 18. Now, I don't think that includes, right, the price of everything going up a time and a half at the grocery store here recently. But that is daunting. Okay. How can we make sure people feel like they can financially support a child? Well, number one is we need a better economy, right? And the way we achieve that is not with the government being heavy handed. It's not picking winners and losers. It's not bailing out companies that are too big to fail. It's not manipulating things for the benefit of the 0.01% and the big mega monster corporations. But I think even more importantly than that, our money has been poisoned by the Federal Reserve. The United States dollar has lost over 90% of its value over the last several decades, and the central bank and their disastrous policies are to blame. If you remember that cat, Ross Perot, okay, the guy with the accent and the charts, I invite you to go view the website www.wtfhappenedin1971.com. They see some very interesting charts about a variety of metrics about what happened in 1971 when Nixon severed our money off of the gold standard. It basically gave the government the ability to spend beyond its means. And because they're too much of a coward to look you in the eye and say, hey, we want to spend money on something, we got to raise your taxes, right? They can't do that because they have to get reelected. So what they do is they get their friends at the Federal Reserve, turn on the printing press, or now they just move the decimal point a couple places in a computer system to increase the money supply. That means they can now spend beyond their means, and it devalues the earning and spending power of the middle, the working class, and the most vulnerable among us. And I truly believe if we can fix how our money works, this is taking away the number one reason given for abortions and would dramatically reduce the number of them. I still believe that we can live in America where one blue collar job, maybe in the trades, could support a spouse, a couple of kids, a vehicle, and home ownership. But we can't get there with a central bank that expands the monetary supply continuously to the detriment of regular American citizens. Now, people have also asked me to comment about Roe versus Wade. My only comment is there are many prominent left leaning legal scholars that, while they agreed with the outcome of Roe versus Wade, they also indicated that they felt like it was done with faulty reasoning. So, knowing that, I tend to agree with the decision to overturn it. Um, Beyond fixing the money and how it works, I also would just offer a general comment that I think there is a general sickness in our culture uh, from a wide range of things, right? Um, Movies, they're all just reboots and repeats. There's no original content anymore. I also think there's a sickness regarding the promotion of alcohol, drugs, and sex. I don't think we do a very good job um, as a country, as a community, and even maybe as parents talking to our kids about these subjects. And I think many of us, as we've gotten older, we look back at our younger selves now with the accumulation of wisdom that comes with experience, and we think about how far we've come. And I'm hoping to impart what I've learned in my life, hopefully to my kids, so that maybe they don't make some of the same mistakes that I did. You know, I think this topic of abortion is worthy of long form conversation with people of varying viewpoints. You simply can't do that on television, and that's why people are going on long form podcasts and YouTube shows and things of that nature, because, we haven't solved the issue yet, but I don't think we can unless we continue to have a dialogue. Um, Having said everything I said, I would wager if you identify or label yourself as pro life, you probably agreed with a lot of what I said. Um, and if you identify or label yourself as pro choice, you're probably not too happy. I do have to put this disclaimer out there, which is that anytime the government bans anything, it never makes it better. It always makes it worse. And you can use that on just about everything. Okay. So I would have to say that even though I am pro life and I want to do things I believe will have a higher probability of reducing abortions more so than passing a law, that a national outright ban on abortion, I think, is not going to solve every issue. I mean, there's a war on drugs and, there's a drug crisis, all throughout our country. There are already laws on the books against murder, and yet these things still happen. So I have less faith in a solution of laws than I do in things like promoting a healthier culture amongst our youth, like promoting pregnancy centers to help out young and unsure pregnant mothers. I really believe a lot can be done to reduce the red tape to encourage adoption. And again, if we had a money supply that was not intentionally designed to devalue over time, then regular people wouldn't feel like they're always treading water, that we could actually start to build towards having some sort of a semblance of a safety net for ourselves, that we might be able to pass on something and leave our kids a little something before we leave this earth. So um, obviously a very polarizing topic. I do not believe there is a solution that will make everyone happy. I believe with Roe versus Wade being overturned, it should be left to the citizens in their own states to determine what's best for them. I fully support individuals consulting with their medical provider to determine what is the best way to support the health of the mother and the child. And I believe that culturally, the people of Alabama may be very different from the people in California. I believe that people try to vote with their feet. And if there is a law that is not to your liking as a citizen, you can choose to engage civically in your community, in your state, try to change those laws. Or you can do what lots of people have done, which is flee these deep blue states that are heavy handed in their governmental approach in a lot of regards and try to move to another state. Um, so I know that was a lot. It's a long video compared to a lot of my others. Um, I'm happy to have a conversation. If you want clarification on a particular issue, visit our website, www.johnnyccochran4al.com. Um, you know, I'll just say this: it's my uh, sincere belief that we need to be more empathetic with one another, that we can't advance things unless we have a conversation. And right now, I see a lot of people talking through one another, at one another, over one another, other. And I think we need, as a people, to be civil, have these conversations, even though passions run deep, and just know that should you elect me, to be your representative in the people's house in regards to this topic, that I think I am very level headed and very open minded, that I would do many things that people who are pro life would agree with and advocate themselves. But having said that, I guess the disclaimer is I don't believe by passing a law you're act to ban abortion, you're actually going to get the exact outcome you think you're going to get. And I think there are things that we can be doing that don't involve laws, promoting culture, having conversation with our kids, fixing our money and our money supply to where people would feel more economically secure, that they could financially support more kids, or to be able to reduce the red tape to adopt children, that is actually going to deliver on the results that many in the pro life community would like to see. Appreciate the opportunity to be considered and look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. Thanks.